Can you believe there are people who can command the rain? In a remote village hidden deep within Africa's lush heart, the rain isn't just a weather pattern. It's a gift controlled by one family, passed down like an ancient secret, bringing life to fields and rivers. But for the village's young rainmaker, this gift is a chain. Her power binds her to the village, her fate sealed to serve her people and never venture beyond the borders. On the night of her arranged wedding, bound to a man she doesn't love, everything changes. Under the cover of darkness, she seizes a rare moment of freedom, abandoning the life laid out for her. Amaolisa village holds its breath as she crosses the boundary, fearing the storm that her escape may unleash. What lies beyond for a girl who commands the skies? Will her powers continue to bring blessings or ruin in an unknown land? Subscribe to Savannah Storytime to follow this thrilling journey as secrets unravel and destinies clash. In the heart of Africa's emerald green terrain lay Amaolisa, a village so hidden it might as well have been crafted by the gods themselves and tucked away to keep its mysteries close. Amaolisa, a place where the rain danced to the tune of one family's ancient power, a gift as rare as it was envied. For generations, only one child was born with the power to summon or send away the rain, bringing life to the rivers, feeding the crops, and making the land rich enough to make other villages green with envy. But let me tell you, this gift came with its own silent price. The people of Amaolisa might have been prosperous, but they were as sheltered as a young chick under a mother hen's wing. And why, you ask? Since the time memorial, the village had kept the villagers within Amaolisa's boundaries, fearing that contact with the outside world might taint the village's purity and disturb its peace. No soul ventured beyond the village limits, not a single one. The present king, King Obieze, a man of tradition and rules, believed Amaolisa didn't need the outside world. And so, Amaolisa became its own island, a world with bountiful blessings, but a thirst for more, a thirst for knowledge beyond its borders, a longing that most dared not speak of. At the heart of this isolated paradise lay the rainmaker's family. Oh, but this time was different. This time, the rainmaker's child was like no other. A gifted one was born, and she wasn't just any rainmaker. Her power surfaced long before her years. The villagers whispered about her, the young girl who could summon the clouds with a wave and send them away with a whisper. Little did they know that her dreams were as vast as the skies she commanded, and her gift, a blessing for Amaolisa, would one day stir up the hidden costs that the king had long tried to bury. Our Adanna, blessed with the spirit of rain and a heart that yearned for more than the boundaries of her own village. She was a lively, curious child with eyes as bright as morning dew, and they said she carried the very heartbeat of the sky within her. Now, rainmaking, it wasn't a gift just handed down to anyone. No, each generation, one child would be born with the power, but only after years of careful training and on the sacred night of their 18th year. But Adanna, this child was something else. At only 6, right before her mother's watchful gaze and the elders' curious eyes, she raised her small arms and called down a soft rain, just as the fields were crying for water. The villagers gasped, the elders exchanged knowing looks, and the whisper spread like wildfire. Adanna was special. This child would carry the rain not only in her voice, but in her very soul. The elders nodded. The signs were all there. Even as she grew, Adanna's thoughts soared past the hills and the familiar rivers of Amaolisa. She'd gaze at the stars, feeling a pull toward the unknown, her heart swelling with a longing to share her gift beyond her village. Why should Amaolisa alone drink the blessing of rain? She wondered. Yet she also knew the rules, strict as they were. No one left Amaolisa, not even a rainmaker. But Adanna's spirit, well, that was a river that couldn't be dammed. And though she followed the rules, deep inside, her heart yearned to pour out her gift for more than just her own people. As Adanna drew nearer to her 18th year, the village of Amaolisa buzzed with anticipation. But while the villagers celebrated her coming of age, Adanna's heart felt anything but joy. The rainmaker's family had arranged her marriage to Ekene, son of Chief Otun, Amaolisa's second in command. Now, if you were to take a single glance at Ekene, you might call him handsome, with his sharp jawline and broad shoulders, the type that could make a girl's heart skip. But beauty only went skin deep, and Ekene's arrogance and pride ran clear through his bones. To be truthful, even the villagers in whispers disliked him. Ekene walked through Amaolisa as if every grain of sand owed him respect, looking down on the very people who would one day be his subjects. Adanna, ever hopeful and kind, tried to befriend him, to find even a spark of warmth beneath his hardened shell. Each time, her kindness was met with cold words, a dismissive sneer, or worse, complete indifference. Many would say she was brave, enduring his unkindness, but in truth, her heart was beginning to rebel against her fate. And so, by the eve of her 18th birthday, Adanna had had enough. The thought of spending her life beside such a man filled her with dread, and her spirit, wild and unbroken, sought escape. In secret, she confided her plan to her only true friend, Princess Obioma, the king's daughter, whose fierce loyalty and adventurous heart matched Adanna's own. Together, they schemed beneath the starlit skies, plotting an escape that would alter the fate of not just one girl, but the whole village. The night of celebration, a night meant for joy and festivity. But little did the villagers know, beneath the rhythm of the drums and the flickering glow of the firelight, a different beat drummed in Adanna's heart. This was no ordinary birthday. It was the night she had waited for. The night she would break free from the chains of tradition. The sky itself seemed to share her secret, cloaking her in shadows as dark clouds gathered above. A storm, fierce and untamed, brewed in the heavens, threatening to unleash itself on Amaolisa. The villagers looked up with worry, whispering among themselves, wondering if their celebrations would be drowned by rain. But Adanna stepped forward, calm and steady, her eyes locked onto the swirling clouds. With hands raised high, she commanded the storm. She pushed, pulled, redirected, sending the rain far from the village's borders. Thunder rumbled, but the clouds obeyed her, parting as if in awe of the young rainmaker's power. The villagers cheered, their voices ringing out, "Adanna, our rainmaker." Oh, if they only knew her true plans that night, if they only knew this was her gift of goodbye. And as their cheers echoed through the air, Adanna slipped away, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and freedom. Princess Obioma, her loyal friend and the king's daughter, knew what was at stake. With a plan both bold and sly, she approached the guards who stood watch over the village borders where no soul was permitted to venture. Obioma held a large jug of palm wine, and her voice rang out with practiced charm. "My good friends," she called, grinning, "tonight you shall not be left out of the celebration. The princess herself brings you the finest wine to honor Adanna's big night." The guards exchanged glances, not daring to refuse the princess. After all, it was a night of revelry. They laughed, clapped, and graciously accepted the cups Obioma poured, downing each with zeal. Cup after cup the wine flowed, and their heads grew heavy, their laps turning into yawns as the wine worked its magic. Slowly, one by one, The guard slumped to the ground, sinking into a deep, satisfied sleep. In the shadows, Adanna watched, her heart racing, hands clenched tight. This was her chance. The forest beyond was dark and vast, but it promised freedom, a world she had only glimpsed in her dreams. With one last look at the village that had shaped her, she took a deep breath and slipped past the drowsing guards, stepping onto the narrow path leading into the unknown. The forest welcomed her, its trees towering like guardians of her secret. Her footsteps were soft, but her resolve was solid. As she vanished into the night, her cloak brushing against leaves and branches, the drums faded behind her, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the whisper of a cool wind guiding her forward. At that moment, Adanna knew she was no longer Amaolisa's rainmaker. She was a free spirit, a girl who had escaped the fate others had written for her. And in the darkness, with only the stars above to witness, she smiled, knowing that finally she had begun the journey to become who she truly wanted to be. Exhausted and hungry, Adanna emerged from the dense forest, her feet aching from hours of trekking along the narrow, winding path. The whispers of Amaolisa's elders had painted Ukata as a place of mystery and caution, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight that unfolded before her eyes. The village was submerged under a relentless downpour, as if the heavens had opened up and refused to close. Sheets of rain blurred the horizon, and a turbulent river now coursed where dry paths once lay. Chaos reigned supreme. Villagers scurried in every direction, their voices melding into a cacophony of shouts and cries. Mothers clutched their children tightly, elders struggled to salvage sacred artifacts, and farmers waded through waist-deep waters, desperately trying to herd frightened livestock to higher ground. Carts laden with whatever belongings could be grabbed teetered through the muck, their wheels half submerged and straining against the current. Adanna's heart raced as she took in the scene. The overwhelming smell of wet earth and the cold bite of the wind made her shiver, but it was the palpable fear in the villagers' eyes that truly unsettled her. She realized that this was not just a heavy rain. It was a calamity that threatened to swallow the entire village whole. The waters had invaded homes, uprooted trees, and turned fields of crops into murky swamps. Memories of Amaolisa's prosperity contrasted sharply with Ukata's desperation, filling her with a deep sense of unease and responsibility. Amidst the turmoil, a piercing scream cut through the air. Adanna's gaze snapped toward the sound, and she spotted a young girl, no more than 8 years old, clinging to a fragment of wood as the raging waters pulled her downstream. Her tiny arms flailed, eyes wide with terror. Villagers on the banks reached out helplessly, their faces etched with anguish, unable to battle the fierce current that separated them from the child. Without a second thought, Adanna sprang into action. Casting aside her cloak, she plunged into the icy water. The cold shocked her system, but she pressed on, muscles burning as she fought against the relentless flow. Each step was a battle, the river seeming to push back with every ounce of force it possessed. Yet, determination fueled her. She couldn't let the flood claim an innocent life. Reaching the girl, who she later learned was named Kechi, Adanna wrapped a firm arm around her. "Hold on to me," she shouted over the roar of the water. With a strength that belied her slender frame, Adanna navigated their way back toward the shore. Every stride, a defiance against nature's fury. As they emerged onto solid ground, a collective gasp rose from the onlookers. Villagers hurried to wrap them in blankets, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. For as long as anyone in Ukata could remember, each strange flood had always taken a life. But today was different. Today, a stranger had defied that fate. Breathless, Adanna met the eyes of those around her. She saw hope rekindled, a spark that had long been extinguished by years of suffering. Children stared at her in awe, while elders whispered among themselves, pondering the significance of this miraculous event. In that moment, she wasn't just an outsider who had stumbled into their village. She was a beacon of change. The rain began to ease, as if acknowledging her act of bravery. Clouds parted slightly, allowing slivers of sunlight to pierce through and cast a gentle glow upon the drenched landscape. Adanna smiled softly at Kichi, who looked up at her with a newfound trust. The weight of her journey, the fears of being discovered, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead all seemed to fade as she stood amidst the grateful villagers. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she believed about her gift, her heritage, and her destiny. Dawn stretched its golden fingers over the flooded fields of Ukata, casting light on a sight both miraculous and heartwarming. The villagers gathered in awe, whispering of the stranger who had braved the raging waters to save little Kichi. Among the crowd stood Amobi, Kichi's older brother, who had just returned from a trade trip. He was a striking figure, tall and gentle, with eyes that seemed to hold the warmth of a hearth and a smile as steady as the morning sun. When he saw Adanna, this mysterious girl who had saved his sister, gratitude welled up in him like the rivers that had threatened his village. Without a word, he strode over and, in a rare display of emotion, wrapped her in a hug. "You saved Kechi," he murmured, his voice thick with gratitude. "You are a hero to us all." Adanna felt her cheeks warm, unused to such open praise. Amobi's gaze held a quiet strength, and in that moment, she sensed his offer went beyond gratitude. It was an invitation, an unspoken assurance that she belonged here. He led her to his home, a modest but cozy hut that smelled of wood smoke and hope. Over the days that followed, Adanna settled into life in Ukata with surprising ease. She found herself drawn to the simplicity of it all. The cooking, the storytelling by the fire, the sound of laughter as she and Kechi helped Amobi with the day's chores. With each passing day, Adanna felt her heart tugging her closer to this little family. Yet beneath her happiness lay a secret as heavy as thunderclouds. A thought brewed as she wondered, was her powers, the very thing that made her a gift in Amaolisa, been the source of Ukata's suffering all along? The thought haunted her, but she kept it locked away, fearing that revealing her true identity might shatter the warmth she'd found here. And so, with a bittersweet smile, Adanna continued to cherish her time with Amobi and Kichi, caught between the pull of love and the weight of her destiny. After a week of blissful anonymity, the peace that Adanna had known was shattered. Amaolisa's warriors stormed the outskirts of Ukata, their faces hardened with purpose, their footsteps drumming against the ground like thunder. Leading them was Ekine, a man possessed, eyes blazing with fury and entitlement, determined to reclaim what he saw as his betrothed. He'd waited long enough. He wasn't about to let a village of thieves stand in his way. The warriors declared Ukata guilty of kidnapping their rainmaker, demanding her immediate return. But the Ukata villagers, who'd long suspected Amaolisa's prosperity, came at their expense, would not be silenced. The fury on both sides crackled in the air. As if fate itself had been waiting for this very moment, Amobi finally confronted Adanna. His gaze was piercing, his voice raw with hurt. "So you control the rain? All this time, you were the reason for our suffering," he told her, his voice barely holding back the weight of his anguish. Adanna's heart shattered with each word, knowing she had unwittingly caused harm to these kind people, people who had opened their homes to her. Despite her heartfelt remorse, Amobi's pain was too fresh. He couldn't bear to look at her. And so the warriors of Ukata gathered at their borders, armed with spears and shields, their faces etched with resolve. They knew what Adanna's return to Amaolisa would mean, an endless flood that would wash away their crops, their homes, their hope. Yet, even as they braced themselves to fight, the sight of Amaolisa's larger army filled them with an undeniable dread. Were they really prepared to face down their oppressors for the promise of a future free of floods? Meanwhile, within the palace walls of Ukata, King Ekena and his chiefs were locked in a heated debate. Every elder's voice seemed louder than the last, their frustration spilling over in waves of tension. Some argued for Adanna's protection, hopeful that she might be the key to ending their suffering. Others, however, saw no choice but to hand her over, preserving a delicate peace, even if it meant continuing to live under Amaolisa's shadow. "We cannot shed blood over this rainmaker," one elder implored, gripping his staff. But another elder slammed his staff against the floor. "But neither can we allow Amaolisa village to hold us in chains any longer." Amobi stood among the gathered villagers, his heart heavy with a storm of his own. Anger mingled with feelings he hadn't wanted to admit even to himself. And Adanna, she was pacing back and forth in a quiet palace room, hands trembling as she waited to hear her fate. She knew what she wanted, not to return to Amaolisa, but to somehow bring peace to Ukata. She longed for the chance to help the villages she had wronged, however unknowingly. Will Ukata's leaders risk everything to keep Adanna? Or will they succumb to Amaolisa's demands? How far will Ekene go to reclaim his betrothed? And can Adanna find a way to control her powers, bringing rain without the floods that have plagued Ukata for generations? The storm is far from over. Watch out for part 2,